Hello and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Welcome to yet another session of Inspiring Conversations. Uh, we here in Iceland have been in a storm, so we have had a blizzard, and somebody said it was a hurricane, but I don't know. So, but now sun is shining, no wind, the ocean is just flat. So it's just unbelievable to live in this country now. So welcome to the session, and I hope that you can I want you to find hands-on coaching, inspiring conversations on YouTube, subscribe, Spotify, LinkedIn, and Facebook. And if you can't remember those four platforms, then just go and talk to Dr. Google or Mr. Bing and write in hands-on coaching, inspiring conversations. And this stream is live from Iceland, from Kópavogur, and we are going to get through, like we used to, why inspiring conversations are. So it's all about creating conversations that really matter. We're diving into ways to connect deeply, break down barriers, and build moments that inspire trust and growth, whether it's with your team at work or in your everyday chats. We will bring more positivity, realness, and impact into every conversation. And as always, this is my hometown. This is Kópavogur, and I live near the sea. So on the right, if you can see on the picture, but this church is a beautiful one. So we have loads of beautiful churches here in Iceland. But to my guest has written several books, and we will talk about this. I found this picture, but he has written more since. So I chose maybe the wrong one, but hey, it's a thing that he wrote a book, so that's good. But my guest is Dr. Danny Brassell, and this is the book Leadership Begins with Motivation, and second edition. He must be selling loads of book. So let's get Mr. No. Dr. Danny Brassell. Yay! I don't know why I started doing like the Kermit the Frog.
Yeah.
As well. So, Danny, welcome.
Thanks for having me on. Thanks for friends enjoying the world. We need a lot more of you, my friend.
Well, yes, and so true. So, love to see your smile and laughter. We need this. So, but before we started, I asked you, so what are you doctor in? Like, what is your thing? Is it psychology and stuff? And then you said,
well, then I said my PhD's in education, but don't think too highly of me, because when I got accepted into my doctorate program, the letter said, "Congratulations, you've been accepted into our Doctor of Philosophy program." And I'm like, oh, that's what PhD stands for.
Well, you can't know everything.
You just follow anything, let alone everything.
But your background. So were you? Why this interest in education, or was it just like, well, I'm come this far, so I might as well take a PhD?
Yeah. Well, if I was going to write,
whatever that is.
Yeah, if I was going to write an autobiography, it would probably be called Pivots, because I feel like I've already lived 9 lives. I was a journalist covering President Bush Sr. in the 1992 presidential election. I loved my job. I got to meet every editor of every major daily, and one editor offered me the City Beat for $16,500 a year. Meanwhile, a friend told me they were hiring teachers in South Central Los Angeles for $25,000 a year. So I became a teacher for the noblest of reasons, for the high pay. And I actually fell in love with teaching. I've taught all age levels, from preschoolers all the way up to rocket scientists. I can make that claim because I used to teach English as a second language to engineering students at the University of Southern California. And in 2005, my wife and I attended a real estate seminar, which turned out to be a scam. And we lost everything financially. And I could give you the woe is me story, but I'm a positive person. I learned a lot from the experience.
Yes. Don't dwell on the past. Don't dwell on the past.
First of all, I learned my wife is my soulmate. I put her through the ringer and she stood right by me. She's an incredible human being. Second of all, I learned that money's not everything because you can lose money just like that. Third, I try not to judge other people because if I was somebody who saw what I had done, I would have said, well, you deserve that. But now I realize unless you know everything about a person, you really don't know anything about a person. Fourth, I became a Christian, which I'm always embarrassed to confess, a typical catastrophe. But the more I read the Bible, I realize I'm not the first screw up to find Jesus. And then fifth, I didn't want to file for bankruptcy. And my accountant said, well, you have to make this much more money this year. And so I started speaking on the side. And I hit that number right on the number. Well, the next year, he gave me a much higher number. I hit that number right on the number. So in year 3, I thought, well, maybe I should set a higher number. And basically, one of the worst economic downturns in world history, I was able to build up a highly lucrative speaking business, which eventually attracted the attention of some pretty famous people and companies who were asking me if I would coach them. And I have to admit, I really resisted coaching for a long time because you need to know this about me. I'm obsessive compulsive. I will not let you fail. I will be on your back, holding you accountable until you succeed. Well, now that I work primarily with business owners and entrepreneurs and executives, I find that they're highly motivated. They do the work, spend some of the most rewarding work I've ever done. So we can go down whichever path you choose, my friend.
Well, yes, but I just want to, okay, I'm not a Christian, but I have, of course, I have gotten the basics and treat others in the way that you want to be treated yourself, and yada yada, yeah, be good to one another and stuff. So I don't know if you have anything to be ashamed of. Is it like it's just how you want to? Was that your savior? Like, what was that? Because
because it took a catastrophe to bring me to it. I'm
yeah,
not ashamed,
so,
but it's embarrassing that I had to reach my lowest point before I started looking towards a source.
well, at least you are not an alcoholic, because the people who tend to go to rehab, they find Jesus or whatever. Like, it's just like, why not? Like, if that is what you found and that helped you, and
like I told you earlier, I didn't drink for 11 years, and then people ask me, well, what happened? I'm like, well, then I turned 12.
Okay, 9 minutes in, and I can't stop laughing. So stop that. No. But why? Like, okay, well, I definitely know this about the women, because my wife, her birthday is today. We have been together for 40 years, and we are just like, and everybody said, no, this will never. No. 40 years later, we are just like, oh, la 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 la. Not this finger, but some like other finger. I will lose it. So I know everything about to have a great partner in life. That is just awesome. So, but tell us a little bit about you. Like, okay, so you went in for the money, teaching. Yep. That is, well, you're one of the first that says that, but that must have flipped since. So teachers are not happy now with the salary, are they?
Well, that's what my job now is when I speak. I usually speak to teachers and administrators trying to convince them not to quit because it's a tough job nowadays. So many different challenges, but it's a very, very rewarding job. I still consider myself a teacher. The reason I'm a good speaker is because I was a teacher. I mean, I learned what works with older students does not necessarily work with kindergartners, but what works with kindergartners works with all age levels. I used to call kindergarten New York, New York. If you can make it there, you can make it anywhere, because they have about a 7-minute attention span, and so do executives.
Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he made it in Kindergarten Cup, so like that must be something. Like, if he could do it, everybody can do it. So, but okay, so when you went into teaching, did you have a high school or university degree, or like when you were working as a journalist, did you have like an education or like set of education, or well, how do you say it? Did you
Yeah,
have
so
anything?
my undergraduate degree was in journalism, and then when I became a teacher, I had to pass a thing called the national teacher. And I have to admit, I was very terrified because I hadn't taken a single teaching class, and there was 1/3 of the test was dedicated to educational knowledge, your knowledge of teaching, and it floored me because I scored in the 99th percentile in that part of the test. And national average for teachers was the 62nd percentile. And people were like, "How did you do so well?" I'm like, "Well, the questions were very obvious to me. It would say something like, if a child misbehaves, should you A, yell at the child, B, beat the child, or C, take the child aside, discuss different alternatives, and help them understand?" I mean, it was very obvious to me what the answer was. But then I started teaching, and I understood why so many teachers missed that question, because A was definitely going to happen, B was a possibility, and C wasn't happening. So,
I say, because I'm a social educator, but I have
uh,
been working in youth clubs and with teenagers, which are so rewarding. And I have also been in a classroom that is definitely the most, like, it's such a hard job because you have to, like, it's not like one size fits all, because you have 25 to 30 kids, and they are all in a different place, and you can't say this, then this one is offended, and then you say this, and then and you are just like, okay, it's a good money.
I'm just raking in the money. That's right.
Yes, but so you liked it that much that did you go then when you must have taken a master's degree in teaching then, or
Yeah, actually, my third week of teaching, I walked by a bulletin board, and the school district would pay for your master's degree if you decided to go for your master's degree. And out of a school district of 1,500 teachers, only 6 of us took them up on it. And so I got my master's degree for free through the university. And then one of my professors in my master's degree program, she taught at the University of Southern California, and she said, "Oh, you should apply for a PhD, and then here's a scholarship you can get." And so I always have liked education, so I did it, and I didn't have to pay for my PhD. Actually, they paid me to get my PhD because I taught students while I was a student in my doctorate program. It was great.
you must have been hated after 3 weeks. Like, you must have been like, that Danny boy. Oh my lord.
Yep.
Well, and now we know a little bit more about you. So, then we have Rab Bassi, my friend in the UK. You should probably get acquainted on LinkedIn. So, okay, no, that was not what I expected, Rab. Welcome, Danny. You have beaten the previous record. Hedin has laughed more in the first 10 minutes than ever before. Danger, his glasses will fall off.
Thank you,
I
Rob. That's
think,
great.
well, if there are ever time where I should just say, okay, thank you, Rab. But the reason you are here is that we are talking about, well, topic is leadership is a story. The question is who gets to tell it. But
Mhm.
as I mentioned, like when I found the book, I was just like, yeah, this is the book. And then you, of course, like, no, since then I have written this one, and shame on me. But why is it that, like, you say here in the below the title, 33 unique ways to think and act like a successful leader that will transform your professional and personal life. 33 unique ways to think and act like a successful leader that will transform your professional and personal life. So what is it that you decided to, like, is this your mantra? Like, why this path? So the teaching is one thing, becoming a PhD, a doctor, is another thing. I will use this forever on you.
Fine.
So,
My wife always says I'm a doctor, but I'm the useless kind. So
yeah. Wasn't it the former lady president, like Miss Biden, who said,
yep.
"No, I'm not that kind of doctor.
Yeah.
I'm a useless one." So what led you to take this path, like writing a book? Is this just easy for you? Is your brain full of words and you can just like talk to people? You can write and everything. Like, is this just engraved in you? Like, why? How? Why am I not like you? Are there more people like you?
Well, I just like stories. I like fun stories. And so when I was a middle school teacher teaching teenagers, I was the only teacher in the school that none of my students were ever tardy to class. And the reason was because I always started off class by reading aloud a Paul Harvey story. Now, when I was growing up, Paul Harvey in America would come on the radio every day at 12:15 and say, "I'm Paul Harvey with the rest of the story." And for 5 minutes, he's telling you a story and you're trying to guess who's he talking about or what's the country or what's the company or whatever. And my students love that. But the problem with Paul Harvey was a lot of he's dead now, and a lot of his stories were about like Fred Astaire and Sears Roebuck. Well, kids today don't know anything about that. And so I wrote Leadership Begins with Motivation in a Paul Harvey style, but the stories are of updated people like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos. But then after I wrote this book, I read it and I'm like, that's interesting. Completely unintentionally, a lot of my stories in this book are of white male Americans. And so the book I wrote afterwards was called Misfits and Crackpots. And most stories in this book are women, minorities, and international stories, because I think people need to hear those stories as well. The reason I had become a journalist was there was a reporter in America called Charles Kuralt, and he used to drive around America and do stories about all these positive things. And that's why I wanted to be a journalist. And instead, they put me on the political beat, which was like the most miserable experience of my life. So I couldn't stand.
So much positivity there.
Oh, yeah. I want things positive. Yeah, like the worst thing. Yeah, you don't want to be around politicians. That's the worst.
But you mentioned Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk. Are they a good role models for leadership?
Not
Because
at all.
the stories that you hear about Jeff, I don't know him, like, but like they are. Is it a good thing that Elon Musk sleeps at his office? Is it a good thing that he only sleeps 4 hours and he stays at his office and says that everybody else should do the same? Like, so it's just like, when are we nuts when we look at them as a role models?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Actually, I write about. I'll give a shout out to Iceland. So in Misfits and Crackpots, one of my stories is about the very first elected Democratic woman leader of a country. It was Iceland's own. I'll let you pronounce her name because I'm horrible at Icelandic pronunciation.
Vigdís Finnbogadóttir.
And she's wonderful. She was and she was a former teacher too. The reason I wrote the book, though, like there are so many fascinating people out there that you just never hear their stories. There's these two women in New York, both choreographers. One was named Martha, and the other was named Agnes. And Agnes had just opened up her third play, and the audience seemed to like it, but the critics did. And so she looks at Martha. She's like, "I give up. I think I'm just going to close down the show." And Martha says, "You can't do that. It's not for the critics to tell you how good your work is. It's not even for you to tell the world how good your work is. But there's only one you. There's never been another you. There's never going to be another you. If you close down this play, you're denying the world your gift." Well, Martha was Martha Graham, who's considered the mother of modern dance. She won the Kennedy Center Award honors and the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And her friend Agnes was Agnes DeMille. She became the first woman current hits on Broadway, and she kept the show open, but she changed the name to Oklahoma. So I like stories of inspiration. There's a story in the book about Have you ever heard Cliff Young?
No.
No. So Cliff Young, there was this ultra marathon race in 1983. It was between Sydney and Melbourne, 545 miles. And so all of the ultra marathon runners got to the starting line. There's about 20 or 30 of them. And all of a sudden, Cliff Young shows up. He's a 61-year-old sheep farmer who shows up in overalls wearing galoshes and has to take his teeth out when he runs. And everybody looks at him like, what are you doing here? And so they start the race, and as everybody expected, Cliff Young is in the very back of the pack. Well, a funny thing happened. That night, all the other runners, they slept on the sides of the road. Cliff didn't know you could sleep at night, so he just kept on running through the night. And so the next day, they all are running, and they all sleep on the side of the road except for Cliff. He keeps on running throughout the night. He doesn't even run. It's kind of like a fast walking shuffle. They call it the Cliff Young Shuffle. Well, 5 days later, not only did Cliff Young beat the world record by 2 days on this ultramarathon, but he beat the second place finisher by 10 hours, who was not even half his age, more than half his age. And then when he didn't know that there was prize money, and so when he got the prize money, he felt guilty. He just gave it to all the other competitors. They renamed the race after him. He became a national hero. And I just love the story of Cliff Young because he was able to do it because nobody told him he couldn't. He didn't know he wasn't allowed to, he wasn't supposed to be running it at the end. And how many of us have those limitations where we just don't know what we can do? So I agree with you. I'd rather read about Cliff Young than about a guy like Elon Musk who doesn't pay his people what they should be paid, or Jeff Bezos does the same thing. I like to read about the people that are doing something good for the world.
Or Rand Timmerman, who woke up on a pool table and decided to join the army in 1966.
Awesome.
Unbelievable. But, well, rap again. The first half is about me. Crackpot describes Hedin really well, thank you. But who inspired you most as a leader? Like what is, because we are talking about, like, the series are called, like, this is inspiring conversation. So people who have inspired you. I have one teacher, and I think many people around my age, we have all one teacher that we mention, because everybody just say, like, that's her name. She was a math teacher, and she was awesome because she was, like, you were afraid of her, but she was never crossed with it. Like, but if you crossed her, then you could hear the wrath. But the next day, everything was just because she knew that you had paid the price. So what kind of people have inspired you to do what you do? And as you say, like, why is storytelling? Well, of course, you have mentioned that in the journalism, like, you love the stories, but was it something in your upbringing, your mother, your father? Like, what was it that ignited this, like, interest in stories? And who are your most inspired? Like, as Rap says, who is the one leader you are most inspired by?
Yeah, so I was very blessed because my parents were great, and I've always had wonderful teachers throughout my life. It's kind of ironic. I became a teacher and an expert in reading because I grew up hating reading. My father was a librarian. I always hated the public library. It always smelled funny to me. There was uncomfortable furniture. There was always an elderly woman telling me to be quiet. There was always a homeless guy hanging out by the bookshelves who was a vampire. I always hated the public library. And it wasn't until I started teaching in the inner city and I saw a lot of my students didn't have the resources I had, and I said, shame on me. I mean, I was very blessed. Both of my parents were in the home. We were poor, but we always had food on the table, and my parents always read to us. They always read in front of us, and we always had access to reading materials. And my dad was kind of a presidential historian, and so when Rab asked me who's the leader I admire the most, so there's a book everybody should read. It's a big book, thick book. It's called Team of Rivals by Doris Kearns Goodwin. It's about President Lincoln. This is a true story. President Lincoln, when he became president of the United States, he took all of his main political rivals and made them his cabinet. It would be the equivalent of President Trump saying, "Oh, I want Hillary Clinton to be my Secretary of State." Like, this is what Lincoln did. And all these guys, they hated Lincoln's guts. And by the time he was assassinated, they were all inconsolable. They're like, "We've lost the greatest leader we've ever had." He has my favorite quote of any politician. He said, "I know the best way to defeat my enemies. I shall make them my friends." Wow, where's that thinking nowadays? He was an incredible thinker. And my favorite thing about Abraham Lincoln was he was a great storyteller. And so during the Civil War in the United States, whenever there was a tense cabinet meeting, he would like to lighten the load and tell a story. And so there was one story, and his Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, was always like, "No, don't tell us another story." And Lincoln would ignore him. And Lincoln said, "Well, Ethan Allen was one of the founding fathers, and he became an ambassador to England. And some of the British soldiers thought they'd have fun with Ethan Allen. And so in the outhouse, they hung a portrait of George Washington. So they were all playing cards one night and drinking and waiting for Ethan Allen to have to do his business. And he eventually had to, and he went out to the outhouse. And when he came back, they were all snickering. And they said, "Did you see the portrait of George Washington in the latrine?" And Ethan Allen said, "Why, yes." And they looked at him confused, like, "You were not offended?" He said, "Why, no. Every American knows that the sight of George Washington scares the crap out of the British." I mean, how do you not a guy with a story? Like, I mean, that's a great leader. So I like storytellers. He's a favorite. And then the other person I loved was President Teddy Roosevelt. I have a 3-set biography of him by Edwin Morris. The first one is called The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt, which takes you to the moment Teddy Roosevelt becomes president. The second one is called Theodore Rex, which takes you through his presidency. And then the third one's called Colonel Roosevelt, which shows you what he did after his presidency. And in the first book, I was just amazed because Teddy Roosevelt, he was sick as a child a lot. And so he spent all of his time reading. He could read in 6 languages. He was a speed reader, and he had a photographic memory. They say you could give him an 800-page book in Latin at dinner, and he would quote pages to you at the breakfast table. They estimate by the time he was 30 years old, Teddy Roosevelt had read over 20,000 books. I mean, I don't know if President Trump has read 3 books, and 2 of them he didn't finish coloring. It was a different level for Teddy Roosevelt. I mean, he was just an amazing person, and he's just he was an ambitious guy and a funny storyteller. So I like leaders that they take their job seriously, but they don't take themselves too seriously. So that's one of the characteristics I like in a good leader, somebody that can laugh at themselves.
Was it Roosevelt that got polio? No, what was he was in a wheelchair? No, who was in the wheelchair?
His cousin was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. So Teddy Roosevelt was older than FDR. He's the longest serving American. He had polio. He's an amazing person too for other reasons. I love, when I was writing my book, Read, Lead, and Succeed, I studied leaders in different industries. And what I found is there's plenty of readers that don't necessarily become effective leaders, but you can't tell me a single effective leader that's not also an avid reader. I mean, Warren Buffett, one of the richest men in the world, he still reads all day long. You look at the best generals, Napoleon, George Washington, all of them had a book on them all the time. When I look at presidents, one of my favorite stories was when President Kennedy was president, a reporter asked him what he was reading. And at a press conference, he said, "Oh, I'm reading this cool spy novel about this guy named James Bond." Well, MGM happened to be watching that press conference. They bought the film rights to James Bond, and that's why we have the James Bond movie franchise, was because President Kennedy had a flippant remark. So I love that.
You can't beat that. Nope. But how is it? Because I know I laughed, but who doesn't? When we come to thinking about reading as a child, I read a lot, but we here in Iceland, we we had this tradition that we got books for Christmas, and we like per capita, I think we made more books than any other nation and whatnot. But and I loved reading, like you said, like the Krimis or the Hardy Boys, or like something like with an edge off. You were just like you had to read, go further. Today we have this problem that young kids or people, young people, they don't read because everything is happening so fast.
Hmm.
So in your mind, like what is there to do? Because this is a big issue. Because if you can't read for your own pleasure, how can you read then a company's manifesto, or how can you be a leader, or like there is so much element in. Or if you don't read, are you then excluding yourself from the executive club, or what, like whatever you, how you read through it, or think about it? So what in your mind is are we to do? Because this, it sounds like it is a global phenomenon. Can you say the word
In my mind,
phenomena?
yeah, in my mind, it's the way we entertain to kids. We force kids to read things. I have one of the world's top reading engagement programs, which just in just over 2 months shows parents how to get the kids to read more, read better, and most importantly, to love reading. Because I find schools do an adequate job of teaching kids how to read. But the question I always ask people is, what good is it teaching a kid how to read? I teach kids why to read because I've never had to tell a kid, go turn on the TV. I've never had to tell a kid, go play a video game. And I never want to have to tell a kid, go read. I want to show them strategies that's going to get them to love reading for reading's sake. And I mean, we force feed books to kids all the time. When I was in high school, I was forced to read The Scarlet Letter by Nathaniel Hawthorne, written in like 1850. And no offense to people that love the book, I hated the book. The book is basically about Hester Prynne. She commits adultery, and so she's forced to wear an A on her chest. And I raised my hand in class, and I asked my teacher if I could wear a B on my chest because I was so bored reading that book. Now, if it was a better teacher, what she should have done is said, well, what are you interested in, Danny? Because the research is very clear on this. It doesn't matter what you read. What matters is how much you read. It doesn't matter if you're reading James Joyce or James and the Giant Peach. People who read more read better. So when I was teaching second grade, I had a little 8-year-old boy, Kiara, and Kiara's first grade teacher told me, Kiara don't know nothing. I'm like, well, thank you for that. Well, Kiara, who don't know nothing, comes into my classroom one day. He's like, hey, man, Mr. Brassell, you see Barkley last night? He had 18 points and 16 rebounds. I'm like, thank you, Kiara. Because from that day forward, every day after lunch, I'd sit Kiara on my lap. We'd read the LA Times sports page together. And by the end of the year, Kiara was one of my best readers in the class. All he read about was sports. But that's the way you get the kid hooked. I always tell parents, the little boy who only reads Captain Underpants is going to become a better reader than the little boy who refuses to read anything. Captain Underpants is the gateway drug to Shakespeare, but you got to get the kid hooked on it first. So if I could make one little magic change around the world, it would be to show kids why reading is fun. And there's nothing fun about being forced to read. And I'm not putting down Charles Dickens or William Shakespeare or Jane Austen, but that might not be what you're into. If the little boy only wants to read about Messi, the soccer player, read about Messi. That's what he's interested in.
Yeah, it must be, as for me as a social educator, it was always finding the little things that they were interested in, the youth. Like, don't be bored. Like, what are you into? And I had this mother who came to me, and she was so worried because her boy, he was always playing computer games, Dungeons or whatever. Like, I didn't even know it back then. And the first thing I did was having gather all the computer nerds and play, the game together. And he was there, and she was furious. And I said, well, I had to invite him in to get to know him and say, oh, you're good at this. and to say, like to talk to, I couldn't just go up to him and say, "Oh, you need to quit playing computer games," and then we will go to the mall. But like you have to do it in and it's definitely on their premises, like that you have to find the interest. Why are you, as you say, shoveling Dickens or Shakespeare down their throat, and they are just like,
Yeah.
who?
They don't relate
Because
to it.
because we have, like, we were supposed to read. We have one guy who had the Nobel Prize in literature. He wrote in a different, like he just wrote it as it came out of his mouth. It was very difficult to read. It was language that you were just like, what? But when you saw the play, then you understood it and you got interested, and then he was very much into like how people lived and the like how the rich treated the poor, yada yada yada. But it was horrible to read. But
Yeah.
then again, when they translated it to Icelandic,
Mhm.
New Icelandic, it was just like, what is this? Then you're like, why are they ruining the books? But in order to get people to read. But maybe that, as you say, that is just, but I think art, like you can learn a lot in a theater if you take a book, like take Shakespeare and Hamlet or Romeo and Juliet. Like there are so many things that can interest you in a written text.
Yeah, and a good teacher can show you. I mean, when I taught eighth grade special education. It was not special education. It was 16 boys that nobody else wanted to teach. 8 African American, 8 Latino, and if their life wasn't miserable enough, they got stuck with the white dude as the teacher. And so I was supposed to teach them Romeo and Juliet. And there's no way they were going to read Romeo and Juliet. They had no interest in Romeo and Juliet. Unfortunately, I taught in the Compton Watts area of South Central Los Angeles. There's a great local author from that area named Walter Mosley, who has this great book called Always Outnumbered, Always Outgunned, about two rival gangs in South Central, the Bloods and the Crips. And so we read that. And so then when we read Romeo and Juliet, I'm like, Romeo and Juliet, the Capulets and the Montagues, it's just like the Bloods and the Crips. The reason they talk funny is because that's their gang. That's how they talk in their gang. And all of a sudden the guy's like, oh. And that's how we got interested in Shakespeare's when they realized, oh, Romeo and Juliet is kind of gang warfare. That's what the book's about. I just had to relate it to something that they were interested in. And that's all you really have to do with kids is, one of the top strategies I share with parents. Rob writes Spider-Man. Yeah, I mean, the comics,
Yeah.
I don't understand why we don't have comics readily available to everybody. There's actually research that when the Fantastic Four came out, literacy scores went up in America because kids start, and people's like, the comic books are actually rated a higher level than network news, as a matter of fact. I think comics are a great way to get kids excited about it because the more excited we get kids to read, the more likely they are to read, and the more they read, the better they get. One of the strategies I share with parents is turn on the closed captioning on the television set. And they'll look at me and they say, well, wait a second, the show's in English and the subtitles are in English. What good does that do? I'm like, well, that's a fair point. But let me make a point. Have you ever watched a show with subtitles and not looked at the subtitles? It's actually very difficult to do. Your brain is directed towards the text. And there's actual research to support this. If you look at reading scores around the world, the more kids watch TV, the lower their reading scores are in every single country on the planet except for one. The country where kids watch the most TV also has the highest reading scores on the planet. It's Finland. And people always ask, well, how can that be? I'm like, well, because Finland makes really bad TV shows. And so what they do is they have to import all these old American TV sitcoms like Happy Days and Welcome Back, Kotter and Goose. They translate everything into Finnish. The kids are constantly reading. I'm like, turn on the closed captioning on the TV.
That is what I am used to. Like we had like the English sitcoms, and then we had Icelandic text under. But me and my wife, when we are watching like everything, we always have a subtitle in English, just to be sure
Yeah.
that we are hearing correctly. And then why do they say that? You don't say that word like that because it's written like, and then we automatically start to think like, why is this? But Rap here has a question. Have you thought about creating a comic book for leaders?
Yeah, I just
Well,
saw that.
some
I'm like,
leaders really need to read better. Like, he is slamming. Like, is this a world concept? Is this a global phenomenon? Like, but like, should we do a comic book for leaders?
Yeah, I think that's probably a good idea. I love that idea. We can do briefings for all the leaders of the world. You know, they need pictures.
You heard it first.
I don't
You
understand.
heard it first on Inspiring Conversations.
Yeah, I don't understand why. Like, as the books get older, they stop putting pictures. I always like the pictures in comics. You get some really good artists there. So I think that's a great idea. I think I might have to liberate that.
Oh boy, oh boy! You and
Take my
Rap, you will
minions.
fit. He is also like he needs his pictures. He said to me once, "Effective communication have a lot of pictures." And I was
Well,
just like,
absolutely. I mean, think about that. So this is what I do with executives: is I tell them, you know, I work with them. A lot of them, they have all these statistics and data points and things like that. And so I like to tell the story. I'm like, when I was a teacher, I was once asked to judge a science fair, and so there was 3 finalists. And so the first finalist, her project was on the effects of the effects of photosynthesis on chlorophyll production. I mean, she had a trifold, she had all kinds of charts, she had 47 bullet points. Okay, the second finalist, his project was a comparative analysis of soil density. He had all kinds of graphs. He had all kinds of charts. I mean, he had laminated soil samples. The third finalist had a baking soda volcano that erupted every 90 seconds. So chlorophyll, dirt, volcano. Which one do you think all the kids wanted to see? It was the volcano. I mean, I see
volcano,
so many executives, they're trying to raise capital with a chlorophyll presentation. They go to private equity with soil, and they ignore the fact that the way you're going to capture customers is with the volcano. The best presentations, they will go into, I was pointing out on a Christian podcast, if you look at the Bible, I always love laughing when I read the Bible, because if you read the Bible, Jesus is the most frustrated teacher in the history of the planet. He's got 12 dense guys hanging out with him. They never understand anything he says. So he's like, all right, let me worry. And I bet you 9 out of 10 non-Christians are familiar with the story of the Good Samaritan. They're familiar with the story of the prodigal son. They're familiar with the story of David and Goliath. But I also bet you 9 out of 10 Christians cannot tell you the 10 Commandments. And the reason was because the 10 Commandments wasn't presented as a story. It was presented as a PowerPoint slide with 10 bullet points that you're supposed to memorize. People don't remember that kind of, I mean, it was, of all people, it was Joseph Stalin who said, 1 million people dead is a statistic. 1 person dead is a tragedy. Translation, facts tell, but stories sell. Facts inform, stories transform. And what you're trying to do is always tell the story. That's what people are drawn to. And so that's what I love working with. I'm working with a lot of financial advisors right now. I've told them to get rid of all of the numbers. I'm like, the numbers aren't going to get you any more customers. It's the stories. Tell stories that are going to get people to think about their retirement plans and what is it that they don't know. Don't tell them numbers are meaningless.
And the relationships, like you have to treat your treat your customers, and what is it that, to what length, and the relationship, and just do stuff. But are you really sure it was Stalin who said? Wasn't it Churchill who said that?
Well, I'd rather it be Churchill. I'll check, but I think it's Stalin. It's much easier for me to quit. And actually, if you want some good books, there's a trilogy on The Last Lion trilogy by William Manchester on Winston Churchill. I think Churchill may have been the most important person in the 20th century. I mean, Einstein was also up there, but I don't think the world is anywhere near where it is today if it wasn't for Churchill. He saved the planet.
Yeah. Well, and I think that like the Canadian Prime Minister, where his speech was phenomenal. Why can't I say it? I can't say the PH phenomenon and then phenomenal.
Yeah, right.
Oh, English is just not my first language, so
yeah.
I'm always making that. I'm always.
Atlantic, I can promise you that.
Yeah, it's better than your Icelandic. Thank you very much. but because time flies when you're having fun, and we have 14 minutes, Danny.
Okay.
And you're because you mentioned the lead, no, the reading program, and you were doing that in a partnership with a man who I just can't remember name. Who is your partner in crime in the reading?
Nestor Santia is my partner in crime. He's a great guy. He's from Argentina, and he's my top manager and sales guy. We've taken the program around the world. It was nice when we were in India. Um, we had priced the product, the program at one rate, and I was talking to the Minister of Education in India, and he was so nice. He's like, Danny, we love your reading program, but it is way too expensive. We cannot afford it. I looked at him, I'm like, Mr. Minister, I'll give it to you for $1 a kid. Just make sure every kid in India gets it, because there's 350 million of them. And I was joking at the time, but then I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? I am going to make it $1, because I want every kid around the world to start getting excited about reading. And so now the program, it's $1 a kid. When we were in Egypt, it was great. One of my jobs is I'm a visiting distinguished professor at the American University in Cairo. Say that 5 times. And whenever I go back to Cairo, I like to speak to the different schools in the area. Well, they booked me at this Islamic school, and I was really kind of terrified. I'm like, I don't know if a Christian guy is going to do very well at an Islamic school. So I did a parent training at 2 in the afternoon. 400 parents showed up, and I mean, the guys all had long beards. The women were in burqas, and we were talking like you and I are talking right now. I'm like, shame on me. Well, I started off the presentation. I said, so I was reading a book the other day. Have any of you ever read the Quran? And so they all laughed. I'm like, okay, good. They have a sense of humor. And I said, oh, well, then you know the story when the angel Gabriel appears in the cave to Muhammad. What's his first instruction to Muhammad? Because the first pillar of Islam is to read. And so I looked at these parents like, so not only should we get your kids reading, it's actually written in your most sacred text. It's your duty to get your kids reading. And I had 400 heads going like this. And I'm like, holy cow, who would have thought the Christian dude's favorite audiences are Muslims? Absolutely my favorite audiences are Muslims, because they are just, they're curious and wonderful to me. And that's what I love about, I mean, just like I told you, I'm coming to backpack in Iceland this summer. I'm so, because I've never been to Iceland, so I get to see it. I wish more people would see this beautiful world. The planet's amazing, and so many people see it.
Well, don't you have to mention that you will meet this lovely man here. Not to overdo it, but why is it that, like, it's funny when I think back, because I lived in Denmark for 8 years, and our kids are conceived there. Well, conceived is a matter of opinion, because they are IVF kids, but when they were born, like, because we had this discussion like for a long time, me and my wife, like, she wanted to come back to Iceland, and I was like, yes, no, yes, no. It depended on like the weather and the wind. And when I saw them, I just looked at my wife, who was sedated and everything with a sponge in her nose and whatnot. And I just looked at her and said, we are moving home. And she was, huh? And that is because, not that, like, the Danes are fantastic, and they are good people, a good nation, but they don't have what we get. Like, we have the mountains, and in the mountains are so many stories. We have trolls, we have elves, we have like whatnot, and we in my hometown, I will maybe get your people to go there, because they were making a road which was from one point A to point B through the town. And then they came to this rock formation, and they started drilling holes, and then they put dynamite tubes in the holes, and then they blasted. Nothing happened. And they were just like, okay. And then okay, maybe we should have heavier equipment, but then the equipment started to break. And then they tried again to blast the rocks, and they didn't know what to do. So they were just like, Then there was this person who came to them and said, you can't do anything with these rocks. This is like the elves live there.
Uh,
It's an elf church. So they had to divert the road.
I love it.
So that was the solution, and that is what we do. We just like, oh, yeah, okay, then we just like we figure out stuff, and we have one of the areas that you will see that there are three rock formations in the ocean where the black beach is, and it's a troll, her daughter, and a ship. And they went out, the troll mother and troll daughter, they went out because they were hungry and they saw the ship. But what she didn't realize, the mother, that the sun was coming up. So when the beams hit her, they turned into rocks. And you can literally, if you want to, then you can see how the strings are from the ship. Like it's just like, yeah, and it's all about the imagination and maybe giving you permission to step out. Like my wife asked me the other day if I would go into teaching. Well, for me, teaching is just like you have this amount of time, but I need to break out of the because I can't do things just normally.
Mhm.
That's not me. So it's just how about giving people just allowing people to do and think for themselves because we are isn't it school is just a little bit too military, like one size fits all and you have to do and you have to be, and if you deviate then it's just like, oh, you will go to
Yeah,
place where it's very hot.
that's right.
So last question from Rab, because he is fantastic. Leaders often have strange logic when justifying a decision. Oh, yes, this is a great question. What is the funniest thing that you learned from a leader?
Well, I'll give you two stories about that, Rob. Thank you for the question. So the first one is one of my mentors when I first started speaking. He told me, he said, Danny, when I first started speaking, one time I called my wife and I was speaking in San Francisco. It was degrees. I'm looking at the Golden Gate Bridge and I'm eating clam chowder in a sourdough bowl. And meanwhile, she's in New Hampshire. It's below zero. It's two screaming kids. So as a speaker, here's my advice. Whenever you talk to your wife and you're on the road, the bed's uncomfortable and the food's disgusting. And so
Yeah.
that was very important to learn. Um, my favorite story, which I can never tell because I found out it's not true, but it's such a good story, so I'm going to share this with you, is when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, everybody knows he said that's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Well, at the end of his transmission, he said, thank you, Mr. Or he said, good luck, Mr. Gorski. And nobody ever asked him about it. Well, in the 1990s, Neil Armstrong was giving a speech in a small town, and a local reporter, he says, at the end of your transmission, you said, good luck, Mr. Gorski. What did you mean by that? And Neil Armstrong starts laughing hysterically. He's like, nobody's ever asked me that. He's like, you know what? The Gorskis have passed away. I guess I can tell the story now. He said, when I was a little boy, our next door neighbors were the Gorskis, and I always hit my baseball into their yard. And one day I was getting my baseball and picking it up, and I was right next to their bedroom window, and I heard Mrs. Gorski say, Al Gorski, I'll give you oral sex the day the kid next door walks on the moon. Well, I found out that nothing about this story is true. First of all, he never even said thank you. I'm like, who came up with this story? It's the greatest story I've ever heard. But here's the true part of the story that I love is Neil Armstrong was giving a speech in 2004, and a reporter asked him, there's this story going around about this Mr. Gorski or whatever, and Neil Armstrong laughed. He said, it's totally untrue, but it's such a good story, I won't deny it. I'm like, that's a leader. That's somebody. So there's my leadership, my favorite, funniest leadership story. Or when I was a reporter, one of my favorite interviews was with the American Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill. Tip O'Neill was a very liberal politician from Boston, Massachusetts. And I asked him, I'm like, how does a liberal Speaker of the House from Boston, Massachusetts get so much done with a conservative president, President Reagan, from Bel Air, California. And Tip O'Neill, he winked at me and he said, "You put a couple of good-looking Irish guys in the room with a bottle of whiskey, we get stuff done." And I thought, that's great. It was wonderful, wonderful answer. I wish that was the way it was today.
Well, yeah, the Irish, they know how to live.
I'm Irish. That's it. What's the difference between an Irish funeral and an Irish wedding? One less drunk.
I thought it was more like one more happy man, like in the latter.
Well, I mean, I can give you, my mom, when she was alive, she went on this tour with all these other elderly women around Ireland, and they had this affable driver that drove them around. "Oh, lady, what can I do?" There was one woman who just griped about everything. She's like, "The food is horrible." And he's like, "Oh, my lady, let me take you over here." And she's like, "I don't like this hotel." "Oh, my lady, let me help you find a room." Well, they went to Blarney, and I don't know if you know this, but for an Irish person, kissing the Blarney Stone is like our trip to Mecca. This is a big deal. Well, they go to Blarney, and it turns out Blarney Castle is closed for the day. And this woman, she goes ballistic. "I'm suing you. I'm suing the entire company. This is a ripoff." And the bus driver, he says, "Oh, my lady, don't worry about it. The legend says if you can't kiss the Blarney Stone, the next best thing to do is to kiss somebody who's kissed the Blarney Stone." And she says, "And I bet you have kissed the Blarney Stone." And he says, "No, Mum, but I've sat on it."
I love the Irish. Oh my Lord. Oh, this is just absolutely the best story ever. But Danny, we have 2 minutes, so this, as I predicted, this would be an awesome chat. So I think you are so inspiring. It's just like it's so easy when people who have this outlook on life, isn't it? It's just like don't try to always.
Yeah.
We are so fixated to find the devil everywhere, or the bad stuff, or like why? Well, and your former like journalist friends, they don't help us much because it's always the negativity. It's just negative, negative, negative. So we have to be more positive.
Yeah, it's the worst show on TV. The worst show on TV is called the news. Stop watching.
Yes. So yeah, I have always said I like stop watching news. So people can find you on as Dr. Danny Brassell on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Correct?
Yep, all over the place. You get sick of them.
Yeah, all over. Like, and then in Iceland in July. No, like whenever you come here.
June. I'm going to visit you in June. I'm excited.
Yeah, in June. Yes. So yeah. So people will be here. Danny Brassell. And then your website is dannybrassell.com. And there they also can figure out to find the webpage about the reading courses, isn't it?
I'm sure if you go to dannybrassell.com, I'll put you on some kind of email list where you're going to get 20 emails a day for the rest of your life. So I wouldn't worry about it.
Ooh, that's to read. Are the pictures?
That's right.
And you can find hands-on coaching on, as I mentioned, Spotify, LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook. So just be there. The next time is 2nd of April. Be aware of April the 1st, because some might, well, there are so many fake news that this wouldn't be bothered. You can't make people angry on that day. So I will be speaking with Mary Korn on Thursday, 2nd of April, and we will be talking about unemployable by design, when your strengths don't fit the system. She got fired, and then she decided to do something, and then she has a company where 1,300 employees work. So thank you very much. So don't go under because something bad happens, because there is always a light at the end of the tunnel. Read the Bible, like Danny. You find the Bible. But as always, be curious, be interested, be inspired. And Danny, I just like thank you for finding me on Podmatch and whatnot, and just keep on. You have a great sense of humor. You have a great smile. I would love to see your wife. Are you bringing your wife in June?
No, she has no interest in coming with me. I'm going with three buddies from college. We like to hike somewhere every summer, so this year it's
Well,
my.
all right. Oh, so you will be, yes. Well, then I will just meet you at the airport, and then I don't hike when it's too close, isn't it? It's too close. So, uh, Patrick Walsh, how true? What is true, Patrick? You don't like he's Irish. He's Irish.
There we go. Perfect.
So they are concise, not too many
Oh,
words, so
yeah.
that's happy. But really, Danny, this has been a blast, and I just thank you so much. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thanks for all you do, my friend. Keep on doing it.